Welcome back to Ralph's Sort of True Stories. I'm going to share with you a little history out here in cowboy country, specifically down in Tombstone, Arizona. Now, most of you probably know about Tombstone was Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and the gunfight at OK Corral and all that stuff. Now, Tombstone has a boot hill, and interestingly, it is actually on a hill, just as you're coming into town. And up there, they got a lot of old cowboys buried and outlaws, and they have grave markers on them all. And I thought a couple of the grave markers were kind of funny. I'd share that with you. It says one of them is on Lobster Moore. Now, Lobster Moore was a Wells Fargo station agent. Well, turns out that he worked right there in the station. He wasn't a stagecoach driver or anything. But one of the packages came in, and it was very wrinkled, bent up. And Mr. Dunstan came to pick up his package, and he was so upset by this wrinkled package that he shot the station agent, Lobster Moore. So on Lobster Moore's headstone, it says, "Here lies Lobster Moore, 4 slugs from a 44. No less, no more." That pretty well says it all, I guess. Other one I liked was a George Johnson. George, it turned out, got hung, but it was injustice. So on his marker it says, "Here lies George Johnson, hung by mistake, 1882. He was right, we were wrong, but we strung him up, and now he's gone." So I guess it doesn't matter if it was a mistake or not, he's still gone. Okay, now let me tell you another story in Tombstone about Doc Holliday. Now, Doc, as you may know, had consumption, which we call tuberculosis. And he was a faro card dealer in the Oriental Saloon. And one day this young gunfighter comes in and he says, "Doc, I'm not here to call you out. I'm a young gunfighter, and I'd like you to give me any pointers you can on my technique." And Doc coughed. All right, kid. Let's see what you got." Well, this kid draws left-handed, fast as lightning. He shoots the left cufflink off the piano player. Doc says, "Well, kid, that's pretty good. What you got right-handed?" Well, he draws even faster right-handed, and he shoots the right cufflink off the piano player. And the kid says, "Well, Doc, what kind of advice you got for me?" He says, "Well, kid, I believe if I was you, I'd take them 2 revolvers and go back there in the kitchen. They got a big old bucket of bacon grease. And I'd stick them 2 revolvers as deep inside that bacon grease as I could." The young cowboy says, "Now, what kind of dang advice is that?" He said, "Well, I do believe when Wyatt Earp gets done playing that song, he's going to shove them up your behind." So the young gunfighter learned something after all, I reckon. Well, over the years, I have known quite a few characters that kind of fall into the cowboy realm. One of them, a young guy, Ace, I think he was about 22 years old when I knew him. He was good looking, hair slicked back, black as jet. And he liked to chase the ladies. And we were riding back from the feed store once along the state highway. And right where the state highway gets the county highway, that's where we turn and go back down to the ranch. And there's a lot of pea gravel right there at the turn. And so he's turning in there, and all of a sudden he slams on the brakes, and the pickup truck does a 360-degree spin. I said, "My God, Ace, what the hell are you doing?" He said, "You see the sign out there in front of the cafe?" I said, "Well, yeah, I guess I did. Let me look out the window." And I leaned out and took another look. I said, "Yeah, it says lobster, tail, and beer." He says, "Yeah." He says, "That's great. That's 3 of my favorite things." I don't think Ace, quite had it all together there. And then one of the fellows I knew, the guys were always complaining about him. His name was Shorty. And as you might imagine, he was very short. And he was always complaining in the bunkhouse. He says, "My balls hurt. My testicles hurt. They're chafing. And finally, the guys just told him to shut up. They're tired of hearing about it. He said, go to a doctor. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor picks him up because he's so short and sets him up on the examining table, and he looks at Shorty and he checks everything, and pretty soon Shorty sees he gets out these big old snips, and he said, "Oh my God, he's going to cut him off." And he hears this snip, 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 snip. Over on the other side, snip, snip, snip. And the doctor said, "Well, now, Shorty, how do they feel now?" He said, "Well, Doc, did you cut them off?" He said, "No, I didn't cut them off. Tell me how they feel." He starts wiggling around a little bit, and he said, "Oh, they feel great." He said, "What'd you do? You're a miracle worker." He said, "I just cut off the top of your boots." He was really short. Well, toodaloo, buckaroos, and thanks for watching Ralph's Sorta True Stories. Now, before you go, down there at the bottom below the screen, there's a little place with a thumbs up. I need you to hit that thing and then move over to the right. They got a thing called subscribe. Click on that, and next to that there's a little bell. Hit that bell, and that way you'll get a notification whenever we put up some new videos. And again, I want to thank you for watching Ralph's Sorta True Stories.